Good morning, world. It is Patrick Lovell and Company, Kevin Howard and Roseanne Rabiola Mile, collectively the three-legged stool, to hopefully be able to present and deliver the Clean New Deal eventually. We're recording this on Thursday, February 22nd, 2024 at 10 a.m. And I'm going to launch right into it because, this is part of the process that I wanted to explore and potentially drawing viewers to understand that the democratic process is not necessarily completely aligned nor efficient all the time, and is typically a bunch of people trying to come to conclusions that work in the best interests of the whole, given priorities, even though that they might have differences of opinion about how certain things need to unfold. And so this is a discussion to that end, because last night, and this has been part of an ongoing process. I have a great deal of respect for both of my colleagues. And I'm going to say, as it relates to Kevin, what he has brought to us in recent a sort of experiment slash what he's able to bring to the fore, and how he got to this sort of situation being involved with us, was because he did spend the time a couple of years ago to watch my work, The Con. And then later, I think you probably, and I'm filling in some blanks, and I might not have it completely accurate, Kevin, but I want to kind of lead this into my first question to ramp this up. That you had seen, my proselytizing on my truth bombs, and you reached out. You were kind enough to contribute $13 to our cause, and I had immediately recognized that you were somebody that had a lot to offer. And I reached out to you in response, and then you came on board. We were talking to another guy by the name of Dan Campbell at the time, trying to grow the circle. And and you've been very kind, and if you really, in terms of your time, you've given us just incredible commitment. I mean, you've watched everything, a lot of what I've done. I mean, you haven't watched all of the truth bombs, but you've watched enough to get a sense. But you've watched all of the new Untouchables and the Kind. But together, you heard the shot out of the shot over the bow. The proclamation for revolution, the Clean New Deal. The catalyst to get a hold of this monstrosity that we're all in the midst of, and that was something that appealed to you, and you took it upon yourself to provide your time, donate your time, get to know us, get to know what we're all about, and then bring what your experience and everything that we've revealed in previous truth bombs in our discussions. But we've come to I don't want to call it a loggerheads, but I want to call it what it is. It's a disagreement on one aspect of how I approach things that you actually find, to the point that it's counterproductive to get our objectives to our aims. And you and I are on the opposite sides of the spectrum here. And I want to discuss that. I want you to express yourself, but I want to discuss it in a way that's going to bring in Roseanne as well, because obviously this is the trifecta. And but there's a lot going on, and I'm pretty I'm pretty stoic. Stoic, that's not the right word. I'm pretty committed to this aspect of the one thing that you really take issue with. And so we'll sort it out. Hopefully we can use it as a growing experience, and we'll see where it goes. Or maybe it doesn't work. We don't know. But if it doesn't, all I can say to the viewers and you is that this is what everybody's got to realize around the country. We're not all the exact same person. We didn't all have the exact same experience. We didn't come from the same family. We're part of this, huge country, 330 million plus people, and everybody's got a story. But yet the collective story is what we have got to address to deal with what we're all in the midst of. And so the first question that I want to propose to you is, what do you think, Kevin? First, I want you to make your statement about why you don't want me to be disparaging towards people that could potentially be our allies, and I'm talking specifically in the media space. I bring it on Tucker Carlson as much as I can because I can't stand Tucker Carlson. I can't stand Russell Brand. By default, I really have lost a ton of respect for Glenn Greenwald. I have lost a ton of respect for Matt Taibbi. In fact, it's more Matt Taibbi above all else is the somebody that I've completely been dismayed by what he's involved with. But I lump it into this broader category of independent voices that have been propped up that are alongside of all people, Alex Jones and Vivek Ramaswamy on X, and they have millions and millions and millions of viewers. And a lot of the times I attack them for being what, as I described, liars, people that you can't trust, and people that bring information to millions of people that, from where I'm sitting, completely further erode anyone's understanding of reality and further project in a myriad of ways what I call propaganda. And as I've also described, that all of them, since I have been, since we have released the con, many of them who I reached out to, I figured were allies, particularly Russell Brand and Matt Taibbi early on. And I have a personal relationship with Matt Taibbi that's about as close as you can get. So that should hopefully give people some sort of sense of who I am and who I have access to. And there's a reason that I'm attacking them, just as I have attacked mainstream media. I attack Rachel Maddow all the time. I attack MSNBC all the time. And the question might be to the viewers out there, okay, look, it's free speech. There's a lot of people that do a lot of different things. There's a lot of different subjects that people talk about. Some they might talk about more accurately than others. And people can listen to whoever they want to. And I listened to Russell Brand for a long time because there was a lot of things about Russell Brand that I really enjoyed listening to, you know? And so why would I want to make enemies out of people that could potentially be allies that could help us project what you and I and Roseanne and others that will come to the table will understand has to be sort of a flagship situation given the insanity of the 2024 election. And so, in search of clarity, in search of commonality, in search of a union between our efforts, we have to get over this mighty divide of strategic thinking. And with all respect, I want you to say this and be transparent to the public, because I think this is part and parcel to what many people are going to have to contend with, and they're going to have to interpret themselves. And ultimately, they're going to have to make a judge. It's going to be a judgment call, you know, because if they don't know my work, right, and that we're going to have to get to that in this discussion, then I'm just another voice in competition with a myriad of other voices that obviously have a lot more resources behind them to help amplify them. So I think that's enough of a ramp up. I'll hopefully remain quiet as you make your case as to why you think I'm making a catastrophic mistake by making enemies of people that could potentially be allies.
Well, Patrick, first and foremost, I thank everyone for giving their time for this conversation, because I do think it's important. And I want to say before we even get started, regardless of how this conversation turns out, and by the way, I will say up front, I believe that we're going to agree at the end of this conversation, right? You know, and that's that
I like
arrogance. That's that arrogance. But regardless of how it turns out, I am full throated, 100 and 200% committed to executing the Clean New Deal. Period. I mean, that's going to happen. That has to happen. So this is about process and how we get there, and not about substance in terms of what we're talking about in the Clean New Deal. So thank you for that intro, because I think you've clearly talked about transparency. You've clearly stated the issue has to do with calling these people liars, you know, because of the impact that will have on their capacity to work with us. We live at a time, and I'm just going to be talk about transparent. We live at a time where almost all the narratives that have been told to us, that explain the events that have happened during our lives, have been untrue. I mean, and we're gonna get into some of that, but let's steep on that thought for a second. We have almost all the narratives that we have been told to explain the events in our lives by our media and our government have not been true. Okay. And that because of that, that fact has made liars of almost all of us. Certainly have made liars of me, certainly have made liars of you, Patrick. I know for one that, and I'll give you a number of examples. I mean, I absolutely was convinced when Colin Powell went to the United Nations and laid out his case for why we had to go to war with Iraq, right? But Colin Powell knew, and our government knew, that the source of that information was single sourced, no corroboration from any other source. And that source was on the payroll of the United States government. Okay. Okay. And it turned out the information that Colin Powell said to the United Nations was untrue. So you had millions of Americans supporting the war in Iraq. And all the reasons that we were given turned out to be untrue. They had nothing to do with Al Qaeda. They had nothing to do with Osama bin Laden. They had nothing to do with, they didn't have weapons of mass destruction. In fact, the last time they had weapons of mass destruction, Donald Rumsfeld delivered it to them in the 80s. And we have that, the picture, okay, in their war against Iran. So, okay. So what I'm saying here is the propensity for the prevailing narratives that we have been told that explain the world around us that we take as truth have made lies of most of us, if not all of us. And
So
and it's relentless. Another a current example of what I'm talking about is the lies pertaining to Ukraine. I mean, the only way for these lies to exist is for us to forget our history. But we are encouraged to forget our history. So we've been given so much nonsense as to why we need to support anti-Russian Ukrainians. That when on a recent trip of Zelensky to Canada, he went and he was at the Parliament of the Canadian Parliament, right? And the Speaker of the Canadian Parliament took that moment to recognize a 95-year-old Ukrainian who was being portrayed as a hero for fighting against the Russians during World War II. And they proceeded to give that hero a standing ovation in the Canadian Parliament. This just, I mean, we happened within the last year. Okay. As it turns out, the person that they were applauding was a Ukrainian Nazi. He was fighting with the Germans against the Russians. He was part of the activity that slaughtered Poles and Jews and Russians, and they gave him a standing ovation. Now, let's be clear. Zelensky wasn't confused about who he was. Okay, right? But we are. And the Canadian government, with shame, I mean, the speaker, I think the speaker resigned over this, because of the embarrassment. Okay, this is the reason why that's possible is because we've been told such a lie about what is happening in Ukraine that our ally would give a standing ovation to a Nazi. Okay, okay, and so what I'm saying to you here is, I didn't. Most of us who supported the war in Iraq when it was happening, we didn't know the narrative was making liars of us as we vigorously, right? For those of us who support Ukraine right now, they didn't know that the narrative is what was making lies of them, right? And so what I'm cautioning you to do is when you are judging whether Tucker Carlson is a liar, because he has projected part of the narrative that the powers that be, the same powers that be that you reveal in the con, right, have projected a narrative. How about the narrative about the financial crash, the Great Recession of 2008, 2009? We were told that the homeowners bought too much house And you had Santini in the Chicago's Mercantile Exchange standing up, screaming out, who wants to bail out these losers? That was the narrative that they gave us, right?
That's
When
exactly right.
when you revealed that, I mean, I'm sorry, check the kids. When you revealed in the conduct these motherfuckers,
Thank you.
right?
Thank you.
You know, misrated financial instruments and used mortgages as the tool to rob pensioners,
Yep.
right? Right. That they did this shit
In the whole country
in the
eventually.
whole country, and they did this shit
Yep.
on purpose. Okay,
Yep.
the nature of the time that we live in is
Yes.
all the prevailing narratives that we've been told. Almost all of them are untrue.
Absolutely.
You want a truth bomb? Let me drop this truth bomb. Why did we have the Cold War at all? At all. Okay. We've been all my whole life. I was born in 1965. My whole life, I've been taught to hate the Soviet Union. Right? Okay. Why do we have a Cold War at all? Well, before I even get into it, because it doesn't take long, um, check out President Kennedy's speech on peace in 1962. No, excuse me. It was in 1963. It was, I think it was June or July of 1963. Google it. It's available on YouTube. Check it out. Because okay, now the long and short of it is the Russia became a communist country after the Russian Revolution at the end of World War One. So when the United States joined the Allied forces after we were attacked at Pearl Harbor, we were joining Stalin, Russia, the Soviet Union, and Churchill, the UK, because France had already you know, been defeated, right? So this was the three of us. We joined with a communist country and another capitalist country to fight against fascism. And in that effort, 20 million Soviets, 20 million Russians were killed fighting the Germans. Most of the German forces, more than half of the German forces, were fighting in the East,
Yep.
while we and
Way
British
more
were
than half.
fighting way more than half. We were fighting in the West. Okay, before the war is over, before the war is over, Stalin says, I will have Russian Soviet forces join the war effort in the Pacific no later than August 1945. Okay. At that time, we were told a bullshit narrative that the reason why we had to drop the bombs, the nuclear bombs, the atomic bombs on Japan to get them to surrender is because it would save 100,000 or so American lives from us having to attack the island and fight our way up and you know, and that. No, the Soviets had offered to do that, and the same thing that they were doing in the eastern part, soaking up most of the German resources, right? I mean, for our British folks, remember how the Germans did not have enough forces to kill you off in France before you escaped across at Dunkirk already? Okay, why? Because the Soviets had them exhausted in the East. But okay, fine. So Stalin was going to solve our problem. Instead, we dropped the bombs to send a message to the Soviet Union. Our American capitalists dropped the bomb on on Japan, right? To let the Soviets know you are next. And if that wasn't enough proof that we turned on our own ally, right, right, we turned around and rebuilt Germany. We rebuilt the country, right, that killed 20 million of them, right, and made them our ally as a part of NATO. How about that? Now, just imagine two things. One, what if we didn't have them as an ally? Would we have been able to defeat Germany? Maybe.
Yeah, maybe,
I mean,
maybe.
I'm saying
But with a
maybe.
lot more blood and treasure. That's for
But our 400,000 deaths. Just, I mean, seriously, 10 times that is only 20% of what the Russians lost.
that's
Okay.
true. Absolutely.
Okay. All right. So,
Yep.
so this is what I'm saying. We turned around and rebuilt Germany and made them part of our allies against them. If you were an American and you could just wrap in your brain how you would feel if we made the level of sacrifice against the fascists that they did, and have our ally turn on you like that. And why? The narrative was because communism was a threat to capitalism. A threat to who? A threat to who? Because I can tell you this much: it wasn't a threat to the American people, which is why our American capitalists, very similar, like the Wall Street crowd we're dealing with today, made the decision for us that it was a threat to them, and they proceeded to purge us. Do we need to remember? Do we need to, the Red Scare and how many people were destroyed? Wasn't Oppenheimer himself destroyed by the Red Scare? By this whole idea that anyone
McCarthyism, absolutely.
And you right. So this wasn't capitalism and communism having a competition and capitalism won out. No, this was I'm killing everyone, destroying anyone who has any association, including the American people, with communism. That's what we did, and that's why we have a Cold War.
Can I answer two things? Can I answer two things?
Yeah, I'm just going to wrap it up, and then I'm turning it back over to you, Patrick.
Sure.
My point is, when just like in the Truman Show, when you realize that that so many things that you thought were true turn out to be a lie, you got to reconsider everything. And so what I'm saying is, in the Clean New Deal, we can't achieve the Clean New Deal unless we elect an independent president. And we have to have about 80 million people to do that. That's what it's going to take. About 80 million Americans on election day voting for a ticket that supports the Clean New Deal. Well, most of those people have been running around saying things that are not true because they've been told a pack of lies. And I've been one of them, and you are one of them. And so therefore, we need to understand that it's the people who created the liars, the narratives, that are the motherfucking liars. Okay. And so before I'm going to cut the throats of the people who've been victimized by their lies, and that includes Russell Brand, that includes Tucker Carlson, that includes Glenn Greenwald. Glenn is in Brazil. Tucker Carlson, we all know what they've done to Russell Brand. We already know that Tucker Carlson got fired from Fox, a profound liar, right? Okay, so just what I'm saying, Matt Taibbi, where is he, right? I mean, he's still around, but none of these people are in quote unquote the side independent media because they have been ostracized for doing something that was not supporting the prevailing narrative. So that's why I'm saying we need to build 80 million people. We're going to need media to do that. The establishment media is already owned by the powers that be. They're never going to help us, right? If we don't have the help of people like that you're talking about, game over. We'll never get there. So that's my point. And that's I don't sacrifice my integrity for supporting them. I just recognize that the narratives have made me a liar, and I see that the narratives have made them a liar. And when confronted with the truth, if they then prove that they're still committed to telling the lies, then so be it, right? But I tell you this much: you can't find 80 million Americans who knew how they've been lied to, and therefore did not get manipulated by the lies that we've been told to. So that's where I'm at.
It's an incredibly compelling argument, and I want to distill it further, obviously, from my own interpretation for the audience as well, because you touched on something that is remarkably important to separate. First, I want to just make 2 points about World War II. I don't know that your timing on the escape of the British at what's it called? Where they were on
that Dunkirk?
Dunkirk. Yeah, Dunkirk was before the quite a bit, like about a year and a half, I think, before Barbarossa. I think. I'm pretty sure it was all probably hatched at the same time. But Barbarossa was the attack of the Soviet Union by German forces, right? That's when, after they did the Battle of Britain, they turned all of their forces east, or a vast majority. They built the Iron Fortress around Europe after the invasion France, and then they built the walls and everything that obviously we had to lead a D-Day. But that we
Your
could.
point is well taken about that, except for the fact that we do know that they were able to escape from Dunkirk on the discretion. The Germans made a decision. It was a tactical decision
Yeah,
in terms
yes,
of
that I
forces.
buy that.
Right. And that's because, in my opinion, the emphasis was on the East.
And everything
They
else,
had to prepare. Yeah.
yeah, and everything else is incredibly compelling. What you just laid out. There was another piece in there that I wanted to just touch down upon. So we talked about Barbarossa, the nuclear bomb. Yeah, but the stuff about obviously Oppenheimer was in spot on. I mean, it was incredibly spot on. Um, I'm gonna have to, because it's somewhere in the back of my head. It'll probably come up later. You've seen enough of my truth bombs to know that
Yeah.
sometimes I disorient myself because I've got so much information in my mind that I defrag sometimes, and it's easy to do that when you have so much information. But your point about the never ending lie is the point, and yeah. Again, and that's why I do take issue, because see, at the same time, you're so right. You're exactly right, because the people we're trying to reach are victims of the lie. Okay. And so
Yes.
they can't see the forest for the trees, which is my catch all. Right. And what I continue to try to lay on people is that we're all in need of a savior. Many people, most of us are looking for a savior, and the savior is the truth. And the truth is what I have. And it is the central tumor that controls all other tumors, all of them. All of it. It doesn't matter what your issue is. It doesn't matter what your issue is. All of them are connected to what it is that we have been revealing nonstop. And the problem that I see, and I love the way you do this, because I would love for you, if we ever had the opportunity, because I couldn't do it. I honestly couldn't do it at this stage of the game. I couldn't go talk to Russell Brand. I can't, and I couldn't ever talk to Tucker Carlson. I can't, and I'll tell you why. Because they themselves being victims of the lie the way you had laid out. Okay. And now let's give Tucker Carlson some real sort of breadth here, and some empathy, because Russell Brand, like many of us, okay, first of all, I used to listen to Russell Brand all the time when he was on his bed in his t-shirt, in his yoga pose, just riffing, because I love to listen to his eloquent mastery of the English language, the way he is able to beautifully contextualize things that snap in his head is an art form that I found invigorating and truly enlightening, but inspiring, and also education, right? I never ever looked to Russell Brand as a guy who was by any means the end all be all. What I looked at him as a guy asking questions that needed to be answered. That was early Russell Brand. And he ultimately evolved into something more realistic against a lot of his own mistakes. And again, he came from a drug background and he was a Hollywood star. And I grew up in that era in Hollywood, and the stuff that he is, presumably guilty of by way of mainstream, but yet it's obviously, if we were to get into the whole Me Too situation with Russell Brand, the guy was a beautiful guy who made a lot of money, who was a Hollywood starlet. And when I was in Hollywood, many women would be drawn to a guy like that. And if he went a little bit too far at a time where they were kind of in the vicinity, yeah, it could become rape. There's no question about it, but they were engaged. And I had, with my own eyes, seen situations like that in more cases than I can possibly describe to you, because I lived in that world. Okay. So where I'm coming from with Russell Brand is to know that to err or to fault is human. And yet he was always asking questions. And he got to this point. Wait a second, Roseanne, what?
No. She can hear us. She's going to have to leave for a second. No.
Just for a second, Roseanne?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
because then I'm gonna tee you up to
She's
get
coming in. Yeah.
Okay, but I do want to continue down this pathway, because Russell, again, was asking questions of it, and when he wrapped his head around it, it was absolutely brilliant, particularly when he got into systemic corruption by way of pharmaceutical companies, which preceded where he ended up with all things at the moment, COVID, and what that means. He was asking the right questions about when he started to facilitate and understand, oh, wait a second, pharmaceutical companies that are providing these opioids that create these sorts of addictions because he came from an addictive background, right? And so he spent a lot of time, like a lot of people have to or die, to deal with their addiction, to deal with all of those things that, the process, which is incredibly difficult. But when you get there, you have to be incredibly committed and incredibly focused and incredibly connected in your brain, especially when you have this incredible intelligence that Russell Brand does. It automatically began going to places where he began to ask questions like, wait a second, those of us who are addicted to certain drugs, wait a second, you're telling me that the pharmaceutical companies that are providing these opioids or fentanyl, and they've got massive sort of largesse from the US government, and they've got huge lobbying firms, and they've got giant apparatuses of K Street lobbyists and law firms, and all of these guys that are in the midst of being able to facilitate what is legalized drug dealing that can create, through those who are potentially vulnerable to addiction, become addicted, and many die, or they go to jail, or their lives are ruined, or whatever the case. And then he starts to find out things like, for example, oh, and their attorneys that work for their K Street lobbying firms wind up through the revolving door working inside the regulatory bodies what is it called? Not just the devices, but what is it's the regulatory body for all things medicine in this country is the AMA, right?
No, the FDA. You talk about
FDA. I'm thinking of FDA, the Federal Drug Administration, of course, right? And so, wait a second, there's conflicts of interest all over the place, and where's the money flow, and who is it benefiting, and why, and who are the politicians, and why? So I'm like, my God, Russell, you've got it. That's the blueprint. That's the skeleton. You're exactly right. Now, if you just take that knowledge and you just slightly adjust it to here, and you go about 10 steps further, you'll see the entire system is under the thumb of this scenario that you have laid out, that you have spent now years telling us through the idea of harmony and peace and in love for everybody else. We're going to create the Great Awakening. And I'm like, all over that, right? I'm like, Russell, I love it. This is what we're doing. There's aligned interest. We're completely together. But I reach out, I connect with his attorney, his people. They ignore me. They don't want to see me. Now, this is what's amazing too. I wind up as a guest on Crystal and Sagar, okay?
Yeah.
And guess who I'm in between? I'm in between Russell Brand, and I'm in between David Sirota. Now, meanwhile, I'm trying to get David Sirota to understand mountains of evidence of information that I have that I'm revealing in all of these recent truth bombs. And by the way, David Sirota, Mr. Don't Look Up, a guy that worked with Bernie Sanders, who is like ardently anti-corruption, he's kind of loosely connected to me, but somewhat cautiously. But why? Well, as it turns out, he literally plagiarized much of the con with, the guy we went to originally, a guy who I've held in the highest esteem, a guy who I thought was one of the greatest documentary filmmakers of all time, until he became what I think is second rate compared to what he once was, is none other than Alex Gibney. And let me continue.
No, I hear you.
Wait, I gotta finish this though.
But okay, I just want to address the Russell Brand strand, because I don't want to confuse it with the David Sirota strand, because that was plagiarism. Okay, which is not what you're accusing Russell Brand of.
No.
Okay, all I'm asking, so Russell Brand approached the truth, and he refused to go over that line.
That's what I'm trying to get you to. I'm trying to build a case to make you understand the reality of what I've dealt with. Okay, but let me finish this.
I understand. Yeah, I understand. But I'm asking you, is it possible? Okay, one of your favorite movies is The Usual Suspects.
Absolutely.
Right.
The greatest trick the devil ever played was to convince the world he didn't exist.
Yeah, okay. And one of the great lines from Virgil Kent, right, is they asked that he was asked, you had the shot, why didn't you shoot him? And what did he say?
Oh, because then you better not miss.
What happens if you miss? Okay, you have the $70 trillion secret. Yes, Russell Brand rolled up on that secret. coming through it from the pharmaceutical side of the fence. Right. And he did what Dwayne Johnson would do. He did what almost every famous person do, is that no one else has revealed this. You haven't broken through yet. I'm not going to be the one, because what if I can't pull it off? It's over. That's what Virgil Kent was talking about. And isn't that true? I mean, in other words, can you really judge him?
There's more
for
truth
that?
to that. There's more truth to that than what you. I mean, so look, this also. I'm gonna play on your point here, and then I'm gonna circle back to the point that I was trying to make, that I'm getting to. And I'm sorry it takes so long, but there's a lot of situations. First of all, let me close what I'm trying to say. Alex Gibney, prolific filmmaker who basically has a monopoly at Netflix and a monopoly. And I hope you're listening to this, Alex, and I hope you're paying close attention to what I'm saying, because you and I both know it. Basically, when I say plagiarism, okay, if you watch their podcast called Meltdown, the entirety of what they put together was based on what we put together in The Con, that you can find for free at www.thecon.tv. Why is it free? Because all the American people buy are lies, which is the point of what we're in the midst of. So they literally, this is a trick. Everything is tricky. Okay. So what they did was they watched The Con. They learned what I knew about The Con, but just like Virgil Kent said, if you're going to take a shot at the king, you best not miss. They decided not to take a shot at the king either. I'm talking David Sirota and Alex Gibney. And Alex Gibney has been taking a shot at the king since he began. But since he became the guy that is the guy that controls the whole thing, he's playing ball. Okay. He's playing ball in a monumental way. And you know what, Alex, shameful, buddy. You know exactly what I'm talking about. And now you're telling the story of Elon Musk. And I got a feeling if you do it like you did Elizabeth Holmes, my friend, and you miss the forest for the trees, the audience does too. And you know better than MSNBC, and you know better than everybody else, and Fox and everybody else. There is no truth is the problem, is what we're talking about because of this, okay? So going back to my point about Russell Brand. Oh, and I got to finish this up real quick about Alex Gibney. So we pitched Alex Gibney initially with all of this information we had with a guy who was one of the greatest minds in the entire world, a guy who Alex Gibney had spent an enormous amount of time with documenting and everything else, a guy who was the professor emeritus at Stanford University, who I call a personal friend, a guy by the name of Dr. Phil Zimbardo, who's a genius, 97 years old, 95 years old now. And I've been to his house in, whatever, that beautiful street in San Francisco. I mean, he is the man. He is the man. And he did everything he could to connect us with Alex Gibney. He put his reputation on the line. And you know what Alex Gibney said to us? He's like, yeah, we can tell a small piece of the story, but we're not going to tell the whole story. Okay. Actually, he didn't tell us that. He stayed silent. He had his director of acquisitions infer that to me because it's tricky. Okay. The truth is tricky. So ultimately, that's Alex Gibney and Don't Look Up, which was one of my favorite scripts of all time. I love Jennifer Lawrence and everybody else because that's what we're in the midst of, by the way. Yeah, and go watch that movie if you haven't seen that before. That's what the three of us are in the midst of. We're trying to tell you the truth while the meteor, Dibiasky, is coming to Earth to blow us up, and the meteor is actually corruption. That's what we're trying to get to with the Clean New Deal. But I regress. I digress. And so I go back to Russell Brand. Russell Brand is a natural genius. He truly is. Okay. But at that point, what I'm talking about is 2021 when I first started reaching out to Russell. Then I realized I made my truth bombs about Russell Brand, right, Roseanne? My initial truth bombs were trying to get Russell Brand's attention. I was trying to go over and through and under the fence to get to him directly because I was dealing with his gatekeepers that had this hands-off, point of view, right? Meanwhile, I'm observing Russell Brand every day. And again, his shortcut to what he's trying to create or was the Great Awakening. And I kept revealing to him, dude, I'm trying to create the Great Reckoning, to your point, right? And so ultimately, we never became a guest on Russell Brand, as absurd as this all is, considering we're a natural fit for Russell Brand. But the gatekeepers, I'm going to put this on the gatekeepers, not Russell Brand. Okay. I think Russell Brand's been manipulated by people around him. That's my thinking. Okay. But because I understand media and I understand that these guys are geniuses in their own way. And what do I mean by these guys? I'm talking about Tucker Carlson, Russell Brand, Glenn Greenwald, Jimmy Dore,
Matt Taibbi,
and,
Taibbi.
and a handful of others that are in this echo chamber. They had to,
Would you put Matt in there? You put Matt in there.
huh?
Taibbi, Taibbi.
Taibbi, yeah,
Yeah.
Taibbi. Taibbi's slightly different, but this is the big point about Taibbi
As a
that
genius, I'm saying. As
yeah, yeah. But okay, so again, for the record, Matt Taibbi inspired me, okay, to do everything that we did in the con. I read Matt Taibbi religiously. I've said in my truth bombs a million times, Matt Taibbi reminds me of this time period between, let's call it 2009 and 2016. Many of his articles, these 10,000 word essays that were in Rolling Stone magazine that were edited by his then editor, a guy by the name of Will Dana, who I've become close friends with over the years. Will Dana are like this, and it turns out his best friend was, I'm not sure if he is, was Matt Taibbi. Okay, I'm that close to Matt Taibbi with all of this information that Matt Taibbi inspired us to get. But we, as you know, have gone infinitely further than Matt Taibbi was able to go. They basically closed their sort of pursuit of all of this stuff back in 2014, 2016. No, it was 2016. And it was because of the book that he ended up doing, The Insane Clown Posse, that put him in the Trump camp because of the 2016 election. Okay. And, and I can understand if you're Matt Taibbi, you did everything you could possibly do, from what I understand, okay, at that time period, to bring attention to the massive corruption and collusion between the government and the revolving door and finance, and it owns everything. And he did it in everyman language to where we could all, understand it, just like Paul Pelletier said in one of our recent truth bombs. Look, man, you don't have to worry about the complications and the CDOs and have a PhD in econ, or be some sort of like genius quant and everything else. All you need to know is, are they lying, stealing, thieving, and deceiving? That's what you need to know. How are they lying? That's what we do in the con. Who was they? Well, it's our entire financial system. Well, okay, well, what is our financial system? The financial system rules the world. Why? Because money is what everybody depends on. And there's a way it all works. There's a methodology. That's what we're revealing. That's what's we got to get to in the Clean New Deal to get people to awaken, to create the great reckoning that Russell Brand started his journey. But then he got, like everybody else, because of the corruption, because you bet, if you're going to take a shot at the man, you best not miss. Everybody got tied in pretzels, and everybody couldn't do it. And the algorithms, to your point, I think they learned pragmatically. If I were to guess, and I was to theorize about Matt Taibbi, I would think that, because I know he had a past in Moscow, they may have had some information on him. By the way, they got rid of his former boss, Will Dana, because he messed up with a whistleblower that turned out to be a fraud and a huge revelation that they did on rape campuses. And so that blew up his career. He ended up drinking himself to oblivion and wound up in Cancun to try to rehabilitate. I mean, this stuff has that sort of consequence.
Hey, Patrick, we got to get Roseanne here because she has to leave in like 12 minutes.
Okay, before I'm going to finish this one point, and then it's going to be a natural conclusion, and then hopefully you and I can continue, because there's so much.
We'll continue after Roseanne. Yeah.
But let me just tie up a bow in this one piece of it. Okay. So the guy who knows everything I know, but he really doesn't know everything I know, because he just didn't go as far as I did. But he could have easily. Yeah. But he just chose not to, because they stopped the ability to be able to go do it. No reason.
What did you miss? I'm telling you.
Right. And so I think if I were to theorize that Matt Taibbi was like, okay, you got a choice, Matt. Look, you do stories in this space. Okay, we're going to feed you so many eyeballs that it's going to equate to this much revenue, and you just stay in the space. That's what you need to know. Otherwise, hey, maybe we do some things that are going to make your life tricky, okay? Or maybe a lot more consequential than tricky, okay? If anybody can read the tea leaves, it's Matt Taibbi, okay? But so can I, and I've seen what Taibbi has done since, and I want to wrap it up with this. The Twitter files. So the Twitter files, Matt Taibbi gets hired by Elon Musk to reveal to us what Jack Dorsey was doing to manipulate the algorithms based on amplifying certain voices that the CIA and the FBI wanted him to. So he was then, de-amplifying, which is turning down the voices such as Donald Trump and everything that the deep state would not allow. And Jack Dorsey played ball. And so what does X do? It comes in and does just the same thing, but in the opposite direction. Okay, so everybody on that side of the fence plays ball, and now they're all, the algorithm is the easiest way to think about it. Turning the volume down on all of these truths, which you've so adequately said, they're not going to let you tell the truth. You touch the third rail, we've got another strategy, which I buy into, but you got to keep your mouth shut on guys that could potentially be allies, which I want you to do, in my opinion, because I think you should be that guy, because I think you've got a better mind for it. I'm too close to this. I'm too deep into it. But
Roseanne,
you've been around for 470 truth bombs plus the new untouchables and everything else. What is this conversation speaking to you at this moment, given the sort of crossroads that Kevin and I are in?
A lie is a lie. The truth is the truth. I've always thought that most things were lies. I don't know why. I never felt about the Cold War the way we were sold. I never felt that way. Why? What? Why are they the bad guys? Why does Roosevelt meet Stalin? Okay, and he's got this cape on. Okay, things like that. As I was growing up, reading things, just totally further said to me, this is all bullshit. And don't trust them. Stay away from them. When you get a chance, call them out. Consequences be damned. Consequently, I knew a lot of people. They thought I was crazy. I never had a house until I was 40-something years old. And that was just by chance, because my mother-in-law, who had been hoarding an insurance settlement given to my husband, decided she would give us some of it. So we had a down payment. Okay. There was no way, never, no way, no how that I was going to even come close to an American dream. American dream, my ass. You're either going along with the man, and like my friend Evelyn says, accepting your fucking white envelope. You know what that means? An envelope full of cash. Okay? Or you're not. And you know what? Russell Brand's a great guy. Is it his gatekeepers, Patrick? Or is it Russell Brand? Is it Russell Brand's fat and happy where he's at, and he don't need you, and he don't need nobody else, and Jimmy Dore don't need nobody, and Alex Jones don't need nobody. Nobody needs any. Why don't they need anybody?
Ha!
Because they're getting fueled and fucking rewarded every day. Okay? Now, if that's not the connection,
That was good.
Look, Tucker Carlson, is he independent? He can only call out what he fucking wants to call out because he's got the goddamn resources. And where was he getting it from? Mega liars, mega bullshit artists.
He's bankrolled by somebody, baby.
Okay. So what kind of fucking resources we got? I got no resources. If I don't do something like really quickly, I'm going to burn through the little money that I got from selling my condo. And why? Because my job, my agenda is to share facts and food. And when you're in the sharing food business, it gets expensive. And you know what? The people who are these pantries, all these people, they're not truthful. They're not there to alleviate hunger or to feed the world. Okay? They're getting their taste just like everybody else. And I say, you either say no to the taste, you got to say, hey, you say no to the taste. And when you say no to the taste, that means you're ready to give it all up. That's it. That's it.
And that's the
Right,
the purity test right there, right?
That's the purity test. But hey, let's just understand, we live in a context. I mean, that's why we love you, Roseanne. And I take nothing away from what you have decided to do, but understand how rare what you're talking about is.
True.
We need 80 million people, right?
So true.
Right.
That's
If there's me,
Let me finish.
there's lots of others.
No. I understand there are people who are not taking the taste, but understand, we're not talking about, the wise guys in the neighborhood. These wise guys own 90% of all companies in the United States.
true.
So I mean, what do you mean? I mean, where would you can't live without taking a taste. I mean, that's your choice. I mean, and what I'm saying to you here is yes. I mean, look at where I my whole career I've taken the taste then, right? If we have to, if anyone who's making any money from these people, right, are not are excluded, they're liars and cheats and don't have integrity, right? Then shut this down, because almost all of the 80 million people we're going to be talking to are in that category. We need to
That's
own
how
up
big
to
it
that
is.
reality.
That's true.
I mean, this is how big and how dominant they are.
That's
So
right.
how are we judging Russell Brand because he doesn't want to touch? I think he does know. I don't think he's a gatekeeper. He absolutely knows that Patrick has the truth, and until it's safe for him to cross that Rubicon, he's not going to cross it. And for us to judge him for that, to me is not understanding how severe this situation is. Who you're asking people to be Edward Snowden, right? And so, in other words, all Edward Snowden revealed was what? Everything he revealed was true, right? It was, I mean, that wasn't the problem. The problem was it was a secret, and he was supposed to keep that secret, right? Okay, and so unless this is what Patrick is doing, he's revealing a secret that the insiders want kept at all costs. Our friend Giannis Varoufakis, in his recently released documentary, revealed this wonderful bit of advice from Larry Summers, Clinton's Treasury Secretary, when Giannis Varoufakis became finance minister for Greece. He was in Washington, D.C., his first tour of the world, right? Washington, D.C., he met with Larry Summers, and Larry Summers said to him, he said, okay, there are two types of politicians. There are insiders who have access to what's actually going on, right? And then there's the outsiders who are perfectly happy grandstanding and speaking to the people about all types of things, right? The thing about the insider is that they never reveal anything that's going on the inside. So what type of politician are you going to be, right? Well, that's the thing. he chose to be the kind of politician that he's gonna reveal, and therefore he's on the outside. He only lasted what, 7 months, right? Okay, all right. This is the Rubicon that Russell Brand faces, that Matt Taibbi faces, that they all face. Yeah, they're taking money, but it's not the same thing as the wise guys in the neighborhood, as if they could just open up a bakery and make their money that way. This gangster crowd owns almost everything, right? So if you want to live in America,
They
you
own
take
everything
it-
that matters.
they own everything that matters. That's all I'm saying. So we need 80 million people to get our foothold in that, right? That's the only thing we have left. And so therefore we're going to have to, it's not a lack of integrity. We're going to have to gather up all the people who've been given bad choices. You can either survive, take the envelope, right? Or okay. So yeah, a lot of people have taken the envelope, but if you give them an alternative, I guarantee you, Russell Brand will come across, or these people will come across. It's just that they're not going to be the one. They're going to be like Herbal. You know, what if you miss, right? You don't want that, what is going to come your way. Patrick is experiencing what comes your way. People like Chris Hedges are experiencing what comes your way.
That's right.
You get pushed way off the stage, no matter how smart you are, impactful, what you have to say. This is the game we're fighting. So take nothing away from what you said, Roseanne, other than everyone can't be Roseanne, Rabiola, Milei. You are a queen amongst humanity, right? Yes, people can't do that. But that doesn't mean they can't be a part of our legion to take our country back. That's all I'm saying.
And they have to do it. Okay? They have to do it. I know they can. I know it.
This is the point you need to
accept it?
make, Roseanne, is that you work very hard all day, every
Yes.
7 days a week, and you still have a lot of time.
Yeah. And you give it completely. But Roseanne, you
Wait, hold on,
will
let
accept.
her, please, because I want people to hear this from her, because this is one of the things that we both identified, is that people don't have the time because they've got 2 jobs, they've got kids, they're trying to.
Say that, okay? When you say that, and you use the word victim, okay? Victim don't sit very well with me, okay? That doesn't sit well. If you care about something the way I do, I make the time. I don't talk about, I talk about it. I talk a lot about it, but I fucking do it. I do it. Don't give me excuses. I don't care what Russell Brand's excuse is, because it's an excuse. And Tucker Carlson's got an excuse. And everybody's got an excuse. If you can see the truth, you either make the time to spread it, or you don't. You got the more resources you have, the more responsibility you should carry. Okay? I got no resources. We got all together. What kind of resources we got? We have no resources.
We've got the con.
But
We got the
have,
truth.
okay, that's the point. We don't need a savior. The truth is the savior. And the more people keep saying, oh, I got no time, I got 17 jobs, I got to do this. But you know what? I got to go to the Super Bowl and I got to spend $10,000 on a ticket, and I got to go to fucking Starbucks, and I got to go over here, and I got to buy this, and I got to buy excuses. I have heard excuses my whole life. You either do it or you don't do it. And Tucker Carlson and Alex Gibney and Matt Taibbi, they have the resources to do it. Why don't they do it? Do they want to keep being comfortable?
Because their resources come from that which we can't reveal. That's,
Yeah,
you know
and
that.
that's bullshit. Okay.
Well, okay,
And
but
great.
Roseanne, I hear what you're saying. All this conversation is about. I'm not saying that they didn't take the envelope. I'm just saying that
Don't burn bridges.
almost all the country is taking the envelope because they have no other choice. There's no other alternative.
But a lot of people don't know they're taking the envelope.
choice.
Yeah, well, that's right. And the thing about it is, so all I'm saying here is we do not have to eviscerate them. We do not have.
And I agree with that. And I'm trying not to.
Right,
And I
that's what I'm saying.
agree with that too.
That's all I'm saying. Because here's the thing: by not burning the bridge, as we hit critical mass and we have millions start to have a number of Americans standing with us, that will make it safer for them to join us. If we burn the bridge, by the time we are in position for them to join us, they're not coming back across that line because we've called them liars, we've called them cheats, we've talked to them as if they, given a choice, would do what the people that we are revealing are doing. And I don't think that's the truth. I think a lot of Americans have been put into a terrible situation where they got mouths to feed, where they have a life to live. And when you look at the whole range of choices they have, the only people with an envelope is them. Right. And if you don't take their envelope, they have a way of tightening the screw. And then you're holding a sign. Right. I mean, that's all I'm saying. So,
Yeah, but there's a lot more to say that I hope we can do. Do you have to split, Roseanne?
I gotta go, but here's all I can say. You either make the choice, you either do it, you either accept the truth as the truth. Failure is not an option, and it's not rocket science, it's racketeering, it's theft. I leave you on that note.
All right, thank you.
Thank you,
Okay,
Rosie.
let me tee this up for you because I'm going to ask you a bunch of questions and I want you to, this is going to frame the next, is a part of it being, I say this, you say that. I want
Yeah,
to,
of course.
because yesterday, and this is part and parcel to the challenge that I have. Okay. So I love it when we get feedback on the truth bombs and I get, people that are inferring, what they're hearing and what it means to them and that thing, sort of thing. And recently I've had several people comment that 2008 wiped them out. And one person in particular said, I've got my story. And yesterday in my truth bomb ref, I was like, look, and I addressed that at the end of my conclusion. I said, because the thing about social media is that everybody gets 1,000 different messages. They can only have so much time that they're listening to something until they dive in and they start to really, really want to invest their time, like I did in Russell Brand and Matt Taibbi and all of the rest that we're talking about. And Alex Gibney particularly. But they're coming at it to where they're getting pieces of it and they don't know the structure and they only know their experience. And you say something that triggers something in them, and yet they don't know exactly what I've delivered because they just now tuning in for the first time. And I addressed this in my truth bomb, and I said, look, a lot of people, and I was empathetic towards it because I was the same way. And what I'm trying to say is that when I went through the 2008 great financial crisis and everything that was occurring, that was happening to me, I kept seeing all of because it became a cottage industry, as you may recall. There were documentaries, there were tons of reports. It basically took over all of the echo chamber and Fox and CNN and MSNBC. But yet, what I was experiencing is everything that they were talking about wasn't dealing with what I was experiencing. And there was a huge disconnect between policy, what the issues were, and that just elicited more and more questions, which drove me, thank God Matt Taibbi was asking the right questions, which drove me to want to do this stuff, which I was able to do it because I've been a producer for 25 years. And miraculously, I found the right partner to give me the resources to go and figure out all that we did. But here's this person in 2024, just now hearing me for the first time. Obviously, they haven't seen the con. They hadn't seen or listened to the new Untouchables. They haven't listened to 473 truth bombs, and they're hearing one piece of it, and the first thing that they say is, I lived through 2008 and I've got my own story. And my response to that was, I've listened to thousands of stories, and I've listened and I've seen this, and this is a huge problem with people that had to go all the madness in the courts, is that it becomes about their story because it becomes so overwhelming, because it's like everything they have to do, they have to grind through the paperwork, they have to grind through learning all of the situations that are going on and what may or may not have happened to them. And they're coming with no resources. And so their ability to compartmentalize and understand the entire puzzle that, becomes what I just laid out, they still just have a thumbnail, right? And so they're like, so what are you guys going to do? What are the next steps? And this is what I've experienced from the very beginning when I made my first documentary film, which is prologue to the con. It was called Forward 13, Waking Up the American Dream. That kind of sets the tone for everything that I got all the details for the con. And that came out of the Occupy Wall Street movement. So my question to you is, and this is what the question was that this person put to me, is like, what are you going to do? What are the answers? And I said, well, we're building a movement called the Clean New Deal. So as we move forward, please address the Clean New Deal and the priorities from where you're sitting.
Yeah, no. So the Clean New Deal is, as we have discussed it in its current form, and it's always open to change, is it's a two-part program, right? And the first part of the program addresses the fact that we have been robbed, that the American people, the working class and the middle class of this country, have been robbed by the wealthiest of our society over the last 50 years to the tune of trillions of dollars. And so what people need now, that the magnitude of that robbery is such that people need help now. And so the first part of the Clean New Deal is America's new commitment in reinvesting in the American middle class, right? And to reinvest in the American middle class by reinvesting in America. We have experienced over the last 30 years that most of America's treasure is invested elsewhere. We have billions and billions and billions and billions of dollars to give to other countries for a myriad of reasons, to fight wars for a myriad of reasons, to bring freedom to other people for a myriad of reasons. But more and more we realize that as things happen in our country, we don't seem to get the investment. Whether it's who gets bailed out in the Great Recession, whether it's what disaster victims, people who've suffered losses like Lahaina, and stuff like that from a natural disaster, do they get help? Do they get their salaries paid for like we're doing in Ukraine right now? Right? No. Well, okay. So the first part of the Clean New Deal is to reinvest in rebuilding the American middle class by reinvesting in America. And we have some specific details that lay out in there, some specific programs. The first principal program is a new national jobs guarantee that would offer a baseline salary based on the local area median income for full-time employees with one employer over the course of a year. The national average of that level of income is $60,000, but it varies if you're in San Francisco or if you're in Iowa City, right? So it's based on your where you are, right? But that is going to be the new baseline for the living wage in America under the Clean New Deal. Not minimum wage that you can't afford. You're still living on someone's couch, right? But the median income where you now can access the prospects of saving for a home and so on. Okay, all right. And how we would
Provide for a family.
Right, then provide for a family. So now how we would be able to make that investment is to have a series of high value projects that the country desperately needs. We need a modern power grid. Our power grid is glued together and is subject to failure all over the place from the slightest natural disaster, which of course those things are escalating. We need a renewal.
Yeah, true.
Texas, right. We need a renewable energy, a national renewable energy power grid. Now, this is a multi-trillion-dollar project if we do it right. But the idea would be if we to use the advantages of our geography. So Arizona can produce more solar energy than virtually any part of the country. Well, wouldn't it be great once we figure out the technology to have a renewable energy power grid that Arizona solar energy can be sent to regions like South Dakota that doesn't have the sunshine, but needs the energy, and the wind from the coast can be sent to Iowa, to Kansas. Okay, you need a renewable energy power grid. If that is such a high value contribution that you could pay people area median income and above. Okay, America literally is, I believe, the third. It's one of the. It's in the top 5 largest countries in the world by geography, right? And we don't have high speed rail. We need, just like we have an interstate highway system that Eisenhower built in the 50s. We need a renewable energy high speed rail system. It would be huge for the country to have that multi-trillion-dollar project. Absolutely would create the kind of jobs that would pay area median income and above, right? These are the kind of programs that we would commit to. But we also have to end the debt peonage in this country. As the wealthiest amongst us have taken more and more and more of the income from our productivity, right? It has made it harder for the average person just to hold ground. And so they pile up debt and debt and debt, right? We need to end debt peonage in America, right? Debt peonage is where you're a slave. You can't move. You can't leave your job. You can't do anything because you owe so much money, right? Okay. So we need, national student loan debt forgiveness. We need national medical debt forgiveness because we're going to do Medicare for all, so that everyone has health insurance. It's still a private market, but it's national health insurance, right? Okay, but we need to end the people having to file bankruptcy because they got sick, or what's happening to our kids over the last 20 years. If you want to get a college education, you have to incur more debt than previous generations used to do when they used to buy their houses. And oh, by the way, the most expensive expense over most people's lives is buying their house. Well, this is what we put on our kids' shoulders over the last 20, 30 years just to get their education before they've earned a dime, right? So no, we need to end debt peonage by having national student loan forgiveness and having national medical forgiveness, establish Medicare for all, establish free public college and vocational education. Okay, so there are more, but these are the kind of programs, big programs, not incremental programs, where we are investing the enormous wealth of our country in America and to rebuild the American middle class. That's one thing. So people need help now. The plan gives them help now. But then, and all of us want this. Once we can breathe, we need this. We need to hold to account the people who did this to us, the people who manipulated our laws, the people who committed fraud, the people who was engaged in rampant systemic corruption, that they robbed trillions and trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars, not only from us, but they looted the Treasury, $34 trillion. They looted the Federal Reserve balance sheet, peaked at $9 trillion, right? Okay, we need to hold the people who did that accountable. And so the second part of the New Deal, which is probably the most important part of the Clean New Deal, is for a president who we would elect on the basis of the Clean New Deal would appoint an independent counsel for the purpose of investigating anyone who engaged in criminal activity that led to this multi-trillion-dollar transfer of wealth from the working class and the middle class to the top 1%. And so that we don't get it twisted, right? This is not Kevin Howard or Patrick Lovell just making some shit up, right? 2021, Google this, was the first year in American history where the top 1% in this country had more wealth and income than the American middle class, not the working class, the middle class, okay? We need to hold the people who engaged in criminal activity that produce that result accountable. And that can be done with an independent counsel, with a standing grand jury, and it's all going to be factual based, public trials or whatever, but that needs to be done so that we can claw back some of what has been stolen from our country and from each of us. So this is the Clean New Deal. But
Okay,
we can't do it.
you got the most important part. How are we going to do it?
Well, we're going to do that's exactly. We cannot do it unless we gather together and elect an independent for president of the United States who's not owned by the people who did this to us, right? Right now, far more people in this country identify as independent than either as a Democrat or as a Republican. We need, amongst the third party folks, amongst the independents, right, to get to stand with the Clean New Deal and convince one of them that we consider credible to run in the general election in the fall, to challenge the establishment politicians, to challenge Donald Trump and to challenge Joe Biden, and to offer America the alternative they desperately are seeking, right? And so this is what we're trying to do. And so the strategy requires, the only way we can get any of that done is if the American public who've been robbed gather together, recognizing who did this to us, and take our country back. This still is a democratic republic, right? We can elect someone of our choice who works for us again, right, to do this, to execute and enact the Clean New Deal. That's the strategy, and that's what I hope that we could do. We will do this together, Patrick. So,
yes. I loved how you said that. And by the way, that was a brilliant, my brother. That was a brilliant presentation. I thought that you really buttoned that up very well, and it was extremely compelling. Who do you consider our target audience?
Well, our target audience is the bulk of the American middle class and the bulk of the American working class. The working class is actually much bigger now than the middle class, and because that's the nature of this transfer of wealth. So, but it's the entire. I mean, I'm speaking to the upper middle class. They too, right? I mean, even because the fact is they're next. I mean, because just look at the trend line.
So true. Well, we're on the balancing act of another huge bubble, but
that's right. And so really, I mean, if you're in the bottom 90% of this country, we're talking to you.
That's the key consideration. So what do we think the delineation is? What do you think the median income is of those that are the bottom 90%? There's a big drop off between the top 35% and the next 45% after that, but it's probably somewhere in, let's for one job, and a lot of these people have 2 or 3 jobs. Let's say they're making somewhere in the, I don't know, if they're living in one of the big cities, they might be up to $22 an hour, but they've got to have 2 or 3 jobs just to maintain the high cost of rent and affordability of groceries, right? Not to mention entertainment is out of the roof right now. So what do you think?
I think the problem. The problem, I mean, I haven't answered that question, but to me, when the dispersion, when the inequality is so severe, the median is a distortion. So if I say to you, the median of the bottom 90% of the country is somewhere around maybe, let's say $175,000, right? Okay, that makes it sound like
that's probably per couple. I mean, that's for 2 incomes.
Yeah, that sounds exactly. That sounds like, oh, okay, the bottom 90% is doing pretty good. But when almost all of that income is even in the bottom 90%, is still way up the top. And that if you look at the numbers of people involved, the mass majority of them are making considerably less. That's why I don't like that data point.
True, but many of them are also tied up in debt. Was our point, right?
Yeah. So I would say as a range. Let's answer it as a range. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So I think that in that bottom 90%, we're talking about people who tap out somewhere approaching $200,000 a year. In terms of the very top of the top 90%, right? As opposed to saying what the median is. So virtually anyone in the country who has household income of $200,000 or less is who we're talking to. I think.
And many of these people have college educations, right? We're not
Many of
talking
them have.
about people that are, you know, in previous generations would be sequestered to a working class scenario, be it, you know, something like, I don't know, you know, janitorial work or something along those lines, which is, all work is important, right?
Right.
But what we're demonstrating is that the once mighty middle class has been completely decimated.
Decimated.
5 decades, 6 decades, 7 decades of what we call neoliberalism, which is basically globalism, which is basically going back to Kevin's, you know, position about, you know, the Cold War was a lie. And one thing I do want to insert into that whole situation is people need to understand this is, and this is one of the many truth bombs that I continue to riff on, but it is the end all be all, I'm sorry to say. That, you know, when you start to talk about Kennedy in 1962, and you start to talk about the speech for peace, and he was also talking about who's in control. And let's not forget that Eisenhower, you know, said the same thing, right? I mean, he was talking about the military industrial complex taking over the democracy. I mean, we've been warned about this. We've seen it, and they've all played a role in it. In the same time, things got catastrophic because every generation is, and every administration has its own set of challenges. But what's been consistent the entire time was born out of a law firm that represented all of Wall Street's interest, a law firm, a very powerful law firm. I'm going to say it's probably the most powerful law firm in the country. And that took a lot for me to really wrap my head around for a long time, because there's a lot of very powerful law firms in this country. But this one in particular, whose name is called Sullivan and Cromwell, who gave birth to the CIA. Now, what's relevant about that, and I'm going to use this to dovetail in just a moment, but my friends, when Kevin's talking about there was a lie this whole time, you've got to understand that during the Cold War, the CIA ran a bulk of the intelligence apparatchik throughout Western Europe. And a lot of times what they had galvanized with were former fascist sort of scenarios, and also a lot of underworld drug dealings and the mob and that sort of thing to be able to finance. And there's a lot of tricky things that you do in intelligence. But what they were also deeply involved with was all of it was a bulwark against communism all over the world. That was the job of the CIA. But the job of the CIA, when you hit the rewind, you understand that it was doing it all the time on behalf of our economic interest, and they were tied in with Wall Street. Now, you might think to yourself, okay, Patrick, now you're getting into the weeds, and it gets a little hokey, because what Kevin had identified here is, for many people who had understood Bernie Sanders' campaign, a lot of what Bernie Sanders had identified, much of which was very popular in 2016. But in my opinion, and this is another place that, you know, we see eye to eye on what we're trying to do with the Clean New Deal, but in terms of the sort of, shall we say, the weight at which we give certain issues in terms of our sort of communications process, that we're, you know, building an airplane while we're flying it, you know, to borrow your phrase, to try to get us to 80 million people to hear us. And when we talking about people that are working class, we're not identifying we're not identifying, you know, our race. We're not identifying any classification other than your economic classification. Doesn't matter if you're white, doesn't matter if you're black, doesn't matter what religion you are. We're just talking about simply where you fit in this economic paradigm. And to bring it back to this point about the CIA, when you understand that the CIA was this frontal force, which ultimately becomes the president's personal army. That's another side of this. But the frontal, that's post 9/11, by the way, but the frontal force of American business, and doing a lot of what took to expand American hegemony, which is also capitalism, which also created what we call globalism. But through NAFTA and many of these sort of like international massive sort of symmetry between huge accounting firms, huge law firms, all of these guys that basically control the system. They are the system. They are the Borg, okay? And this didn't happen overnight. And the reason I brought up the CIA was because when you go through this entire situation and you arrive in 2024, there's a lot of that I've been revealing, which is the ultimate whodunit, and we're going to get to that in a minute. But when you understand, this was just front page Wall Street on Parade news yesterday. Not many people read Wall Street on Parade. I do every single day. But Sullivan and Cromwell is being sued for their involvement with FTX. Okay, so the question is, why was Sullivan and Cromwell made up of the general counsel, the top attorney, overseeing Sam Bankman-Fried's FTX, as it turns out to be a complete fraud machine, and Sam Bankman-Fried's in jail, and there's a lot to that, right? If anybody is paranoid about this notion of central bank digital currency, well, a lot of people are like, oh, wait a second. Okay. And now I'm going off into other territory and I don't want to get in the weeds on that. I'm just planting the seed because I'm going to ask Kevin a series of questions that relates to everything we're talking about in terms of media and communication and what's important. Because in my opinion, Kevin's strategy is incredibly solid. It's incredibly important. Although I might, again, I might not agree completely with the impetus and the weight, but I agree with the outcome. Now, I need to again reiterate this for people to understand where I'm coming from. When you hear student debt cancellation, of which, by the way, Biden, I think, confirmed yesterday, 148
At
billion.
1.5 billion, but
But
yeah, 1.5 billion of forgiveness.
oh, it was 100, well, something 150,000. Yeah. Okay.
Well, yeah, it was 150,000 people were
Right.
affected. So for people who had like $15,000 in student loans and they had been paying for 10 years or something like that,
It had specific characteristics or
Yeah.
whatever. It wasn't the massive,
No,
however
it was,
many billions,
oh
100
no, it's
billions.
a drop in the bucket.
Right, drop in the
Yeah.
bucket. Now, and I know a lot of people, and justifiably so. I know people who went to medical school, who went to veterinary school, who went and got their MBAs. Hold on a second, let me just make the point because I want the audience to hear this, not us. Where they get really like, are you kidding me? I paid my way. I'm successful. Yeah, it's hard. That's what it is. But that was the opportunity that I had, and it afforded me, and I got to where I needed to go because I sacrificed my life to get there. And so they look down in a very personal way. Again, anybody else getting a break that they didn't, right? What we're trying to tell you, and then of course the catch-all is socialism. What I know from what I'm telling you is that, first of all, in my business as an entrepreneur, I'm not a socialist. Nobody is writing me a check, although I could do it this way. And I did bring this up about co-ops the other day. You know, you can create nonprofits and you can create co-ops where everybody gets paid the same money through a nonprofit for a project, and you could maybe fundraise, and that's a version of socialism that I could do in media. But that's not my business model. My business model is you get to, when you produce things, you have to pay for the development, which is like any other business, research and development. Then you got to, figure out what the plan is, and you got to execute it. It all requires budgets. It requires money. It requires moving capital. Capital is a means to an end. It gets people paid so they don't have to go work 3 or 4 different jobs, so that they can feed their family by doing something they're really good at, which would be editing great features that present the truth, which is what we do. But unfortunately, which is what I do, unfortunately, there's no market for the truth. All the American people buy are lies. That's a big, big, big situation for me. And so going back to this notion of the weight of where we are with people who immediately go to this notion of socialism, you need to understand that we've spent, like Kevin have said, trillions upon trillions upon trillions of dollars to the apparatchik that controls our economy, that controls the world, that are those people that control, like Kevin said, that if you're going to like in the idea, in the examples that he gave about Russell Brand and Matt Taibbi and so forth, if you're going to shoot the king, you best not miss, which is on display, full scope, because these entities own literally everything. And as this was the point that I wanted to say earlier about Matt Taibbi, and Matt Taibbi proved, but just one half of the story, that yeah, through the Twitter files, through the relationship with deep state, FBI, and whatever different types of groups are within NSA and everything else, where they can get our information, and blah, 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 where they can, this was also the term I was looking for, throttled down those voices they don't want out there for whatever reason, be it Donald Trump and everything that Donald Trump represents, or Patrick Lovell, who is not Donald Trump, and everything I represent, right? So that's censorship. And so, yes, that's real. It exists. And the ultimate eureka is when you realize that it is all Orwellian, that you realize that it's, and my colleague and I, Eric Vaughn, had asked this question over and over, and we're using an 80s reference, Kevin, in this whole process, which was, is it Ming the Merciless, or is it a culture? right? Is there some deviant like thing behind the scenes that is a Borg that's like something that you would see in the Matrix that has absolute control of everything? Or is it just what we discovered through Bill Black and Control Fraud? When one entity discovers how another entity is lying, chilling, and stealing and doing well, do they uh, try to mirror what they're doing and do it as well or fast as they do? Or it's a culture, and that's what we've revealed, and that's what we've learned is it's a culture, and it's ultimately, and I know a lot of people who are real socialists who hate the idea of this being the case, but it is the case. It's socialism for a criminal class. That's what we're revealing. So that's the third rail that you want to avoid. And yet all of the guys in media that can't go there because of what you've identified, yet we need their voices that might be able to come on board when they can cross the Rubicon. And I agree with those strategies. But at the same time, let me just ask you a series of questions, Kevin, because I think this will get us to hopefully the result that we're both searching. Okay.
Okay.
Cool. Kevin, you've done the deep dive on me.
Mm-hmm.
You've done what I hope millions of people will do. Okay.
Yeah.
But that's just because of the kind of person you are. You're a very detailed guy. I mean, you don't take anything, you don't take shortcuts.
Patrick, I had to because I lost everything. Thank you. I was a commercial middle market banker doing manufacturing facilities, K through, charter schools and stuff like that at Wachovia in September 2008. I went from a solid six-figure career that was 25 years into it, 20 years into it, to making $17 an hour selling Medicare Advantage plans. I mean, let's be clear. I lost everything: house, marriage, all types of stuff. Okay, and so I had to find out, how did this happen, right? And Patrick, your work was instrumental. I learned, because I had been in the industry, several pieces, but the con put it all together, and it drew the line from me as the homeowner all the way to Wall Street, and it was bulletproof. The evidence was all laid bare. I understand why they don't want that story to come out, because there's no defense.
What does that mean to you when you're now you have the information?
Oh, oh, first and foremost, this is, and that's why we love Roseanne. Being a victim doesn't set well with me either. But when you have been hurt and you don't understand why, you're a victim. As soon as you understand why, that empowers you to do some shit about it. And now you're not a fucking victim anymore.
That's
Okay?
the point that I wanted you to make, because that's what I've been trying to do for tens of millions of people. Like I said in my
Absolutely.
earlier thing, this guy's like, yeah, I was a victim of the 2008 financial crisis too, which lends itself to me is like, you want to tell me your story. I want to hear your story, but you need to hear our story, which makes you like what Kevin just demonstrated.
Absolutely.
Okay, so now that being the case, thank you for that. And again, thank you for doing that. I mean, you have no idea how important that is to me because I know there's millions of us out there like that, and they've just, like you had said to me once before, I'm just going to make the point. I'm not going to ask you a question because I want to ask you the next question. But many of us have put this part of our lives in the way back door because we had to
Yeah.
just survive, because it almost killed us, and it did kill
Mhm.
a lot of us, and it did lead to the collateral damage that you're talking about, and it certainly got me. And people respond to those types of things differently, but the key consideration I need people to understand is this is not history. This isn't something that was like a part of time that had a beginning, a middle, and an end, and it ended, and then no, it is our system. It never ended. It continued, and it is much broader than I could talk for 20 fucking hours, and I have, right? Because there's so much to it. But that brings us to, and this is the next part of the dialogue where we started. So this morning I wake up and there's something that pops up on my newsfeed, and this is what I've been screaming from the mountaintops for the past couple of weeks. Okay, and it's Mr. Wonderful Kevin O'Leary, and he's all over the place. He's on Fox Business, he's on CNBC, and he says outright, he's like, New York is now a loser state because of the Letitia James case in Donald Trump's fraud case. And he says, look, what Donald Trump did, everybody does, first and foremost. He said the quiet part out loud. He's like, everybody does it. And then he says, look, I'm an entrepreneur, right? I have to put my money where I can risk it, right? And now New York is demonstrating by actually, using the law and
Yeah.
holding somebody accountable. He's like, it's not a place I'm going to go risk my money. And why would he say that? Because what we've demonstrated to you in the con, and what you need to understand above all else, and this is why it's not capitalism, there is no risk. This is a guarantee for those that are in the game, of which you aren't. I happened to mention this in my truth bomb the other day, and I think it's one of the best things I've ever said. I said, look, does money grow on trees? Not for you. It grows on trees for the people that we're talking about, because they've got complete control of the system. And it's nothing but a racketeering enterprise that has choked out the truth in every way, shape, possible, because of all of the elements that Kevin has demonstrated. But yet Kevin comes from a place, like, if Kevin was somebody who hadn't done the work and proven his solid commitment in the vision, then neither one of us could walk side by side in the trench, in the mud that we have to get bloodied in this battle, and to disagree with each other on important things, but at the same time not lose sight of what's important, i.e., you've got to see the forest for the trees. And it is a child's recipe at the end of the day. It is the emperor's new clothes. And now, Kevin, that being, does it surprise you that Fox Business and CNBC, both who are particularly on the same ideological spectrum, at least if it's a brand, but yet they're both business, does it surprise you that Kevin O'Leary, without any sort of fear of being challenged, can say what he said? Does that surprise you?
No, not at all. Not at all. I mean, but I appreciate you pointing it out and giving me the opportunity to even address it, because this is the new billionaire class. So let me give you the poster child of this new billionaire class. There is a guy named Bill Ackman. Bill Ackman. He was been in the news most recently as the billionaire who was involved with, and I'm not touching anywhere else.
Yeah.
He was involved in this whole controversy when they brought the president of Harvard University and MIT and Penn to the Congress and asked them about, they were being challenged over conduct, over whether, advocacy on behalf of the Palestinians was, threatening, anti-Semitic, that whole controversy. Okay, so that's what brought him into the news. Okay, but how does Bill Ackman make his bones?
Yep.
Okay, this is the hedge fund hack, right? Who went on CNBC. This is beautiful. Go Google this. Go to YouTube. He went on NBC in, like, I think the middle of the third week of March 2020. And he made this statement that was alarmist. It ripped across the world. He basically said that the future of capitalism was at stake if we did not shut down the country, if we did not shelter in place to get our arms around COVID. Okay, right. And you know what? And it sounded like such an impassioned speech. And he was talking, because money was not involved. He's thinking of his kids and the future and all this other stuff. We have to get a hold of this thing, right? Okay. While at the same time, this ass was shorting the market, and made billions of dollars off that. In other words, he was betting against the market, and he did what all these hedge fund hacks do. They make a bet, then they manipulate the conditions to make sure that they win their bet, right? And that's how he did it, right? And the thing about it is, when regular people found out that this was the game that these hedge fund hacks were doing, You remember the GameStop whole thing,
Of course, yeah.
right? Yeah,
Citadel
they
Capital,
found,
Steve
yeah,
Cohen, the whole deal, man.
yeah.
That's
All
when they
when that was
realized that we didn't have a capitalist country. That's what I've been saying.
no, it is not. It is a total fix,
Yep.
right? Right?
Yep.
It's a
Exactly.
total fix. So this is what I'm saying.
Go see the movie
And
Dirty Money, people. Go ahead.
oh yeah. So if I can only take this moment, because this is what, see, the narrative is we have a free market. This is another part of the false narrative that we've been sold,
The
and it makes
lie.
the
This is
lie.
the big lie.
Okay. So when you say, and I'm telling you, I want to blow a hole in this notion, and I hope like ground zero, I just smolder it to this concept in your head, Patrick. When we say in the Clean New Deal that we are going to reinvest in rebuilding the American middle class, this is not fucking socialism. Okay. Okay. If
So true.
you own a
So true.
house and you have
It's like
insurance and your house, well, if you have a house and you have insurance and your house gets burned down and your insurance pays to rebuild your house, that's not fucking socialism,
That's
right?
right. That's
Okay.
right.
The Bill Ackmans of the world have robbed the American public, right? Like, again, the Rand Corporation, Google this, did an analysis just to measure how much we've been robbed, the working class and the middle class. That if you simply use the same pay distribution for productivity that we used in the United States from 1945 to 1974, okay, when inequality in the country was at its lowest, okay, if you use that same distribution of income for all the work that the country did, and you took it to today, right? Every person in the bottom 90% of the country, you could pay them $1,144 a month for every month from 1975 to today. That's over $13,000 for, since 1975. The total of that is $50 trillion. So when we talk about America reinvesting in the American middle class, it ain't socialism. We are making people whole for things that they have been robbed for.
Yeah.
Because guess what? The American worker today is more productive than they were in 1974. They're more productive than they were in 1980. They just get a smaller slice. So the average CEO in 1974 was making between 30 and 40 times the average worker. Bill Ackman and these assholes today, these CEOs, are making 400 times the average American worker. And we're more productive today. So we're talking about making people whole. Okay. And no one should feel guilty about that. No one should feel shame about that. And no one should be shamed by that. Patrick, we have to be red line on this issue,
Amen.
because I don't think you have any malice in your heart, but it is not socialism to make people whole for
I
how they've
don't,
been
because
robbed.
of my point. You're right, because of my point that I'm trying to tell people is not only is Bill Ackman robbing everybody, but he's robbing everybody with free money from the Federal Reserve based on all of these things that have followed the
On
great
top of
financial
everything
crisis.
else, it's not
And
even his
then
own
on
money. That's
right,
right.
and on top of it, all of the, depending on what they're shorting and everything else, the commodities that are ultimately been securitized are being bought by the Federal Reserve as well, which is socialism. So it's socialism for the criminals. That's what I continue to tell you. If you don't understand that, you're in the dark. And that takes us back to this broader conversation about media. And let's try to finish up with this, because
Yeah,
I think
absolutely. Go ahead,
we're
Patrick.
really in a fabulous place, but we do still have to resolve a thing. And I think we're getting to there because of what we're talking about. But I just want to ask you these questions because I know you can answer these questions, right? In context to what my problem is with Russell Brand and Jimmy Dore and all of these other guys. Okay, look, we've already established that many of these guys, their currency is conspiracy. Okay, and justly so. Okay, like I had demonstrated earlier with Russell Brand. Yes, it is a conspiracy in the pharmaceuticals and opioids when you have these guys on both sides of the fence, and then their law firms that are inside the regulatory commissions and all of the conflicts of interest and revolving door, because that's how they guarantee the system. Okay. I just did a very short version of what we demonstrate in the kind, but ultimately they're thinking in terms of conspiracy, right? And so what's happened in the United States is because and I think this has really fueled a lot of what MAGA became. Now, again, like any political movement, and I've said this in previous Truth Bombs, what exactly is MAGA? Is MAGA, if you're watching Lawrence O'Donnell night in, night out, MAGA is a splintered group of people who have lost their minds that Hillary Clinton described as deplorables, that have moved into a place where they worship Donald Trump on the altar of conspiracy, and that they have lost their minds to the point that they are to be ridiculed, and obviously they are to be shunned off in a way that they're just this problem that doesn't understand what's at stake, that democracy is at stake, that our free markets are at stake. And what you and I have been demonstrating this whole time, that one side of the fence is free markets is a myth. That's the big lie. But of course, democracy is a myth. It's a big lie. We've got a 2024 presidential campaign of the lesser of two evils, of these two hyper old white men that they're different people, different come froms, and we haven't even got into the debate about who these two people are because we don't want to. We want to talk about the issues that we need to elevate above everybody's not being able to understand what's going on because of the deluge of misinformation from media, both from mainstream, but also from all of these groups that we've talked about. Now, couldn't they be allies? Possibly at some point. Time will tell. They haven't yet, based on so much more that I haven't told you about. Okay. But going back to who Patrick Lovell is in context to who Kevin Howard is in context to what we're trying to achieve with the Clean New Deal is okay. Again, briefly, if we can, and I'm speaking to myself, I'm trying to say to myself, Patrick, please be brief, which is a possibility. Kevin, when we demonstrated that Addie Polk was a sort of the ultimate expression of what this system has become, the way we designed it was that when we discovered her story, an African American woman who had escaped, she had to migrate away from it was the Great Migration during Jim Crow, that a lot of African Americans had escaped the South, and they were able to migrate to the industrial Midwest, where her husband, Robert Polk, got 2 jobs in the rubber factories of Akron, Ohio, during World War II, when a lot of the white service members were out, fighting in the war, and they hired women and they hired minorities. But as a result of that, they got an opportunity to save enough to get a house that they ultimately owned. And when they ultimately owned that house, like many African Americans, that was the ultimate American dream coming from the Jim Crow South, is to have your own property. And they took this, like, I mean, it was Babylon.
That's right.
I mean, it was
Yes.
like, the beams from heaven came down. I mean, and that gave them the ultimate constitution. And it's one of the most glorious moments in American history, as far as I'm concerned. Then we wind up at the situation where we have redlining, where we learned that African Americans were held out of a bunch of areas in the United States. They weren't allowed financing by banks. They were held down. They were forced into meager sort of incomes, and they were still in bondage. But Addie and Robert had reached out. They had gotten a piece of the American dream, and ultimately it was ripped from her when she was in her 90s because of a methodology that's involved with everything that we're trying to reveal to you, which is another manifestation of fraud. Fraud is not shenanigans like Hillary Clinton once quipped as she was trying to justify getting paid $400,000 from Goldman Sachs, who rigged a multi-trillion-dollar fraud against the world, quite frankly. And starting with the people like Addie Polk. And Addie Polk wound up having to shoot herself. It was a suicide, but the way I look at it, it was a murder. It was a murder of the American dream because they used documentation fraud and to steal her house through this methodology called straw buying, which we show you on the con at www.thecon.tv. But she had to shoot herself instead of have I don't even know how to describe it. I mean, imagine going from your own house that you achieved the American dream to having it stolen from you, and your choice is either the street or death. And she was a very religious woman. okay, a very religious woman. So imagine the consternation that she would have to go through. She ends up shooting herself in the chest. She chose, like we say in the con, the woman who we interviewed who told us the story, she chose to dwell in the house of the Lord versus in the depths of depravity on the streets, right? Think about that is the ultimate personification. But through her, we were able to, and it was like a voice from on high. We were able to, one, understand her story, but she led us to an investigation that was done by Summit County, Ohio, former Attorney General Mark Dan, that put all of the pieces together because it was their job as Attorney General to protect the consumers and the citizens of that state. They discovered that there was a crime that happened, and it was a racketeering crime. And it turned out to be a much larger racketeering crime. And it was a large mid-level player from a regional enterprise that was doing $60–80 million a year on this apparatus. And they brought down the law on this guy because they did the work that the government of, by, and for the people is supposed to do. And they demonstrated that this is the way it's done, and this is what they did. And they got a racketeering conviction of this guy, David Willen. And by the way, they had threads that took it to Goldman Sachs. Now, just so you know, Goldman Sachs told them at the time, and we showed this in the con, that said Goldman Sachs put up their hands and were like, you don't know what you're talking about, right? Yeah, exactly. I love that reaction. You don't know what you're talking about. Here's a small group of, as it turns out, white cops that were doing their job on behalf of African Americans. I'm not using that as some sort of cliche, as some sort of, it's just
But
a
this
fact.
is Ohio. This is Ohio. This is
Yeah.
right. This is
It's old school. These guys just
Yeah.
did the work. And
Yeah.
like their head investigator, this guy, Tom Murphy, said to us, it's
hero.
fact. Yeah. And that's what really grabbed Roseanne Rabiot Amile. He's like, it's theft. And again, like Paul Pelletier, former DOJ director for 30 years, says to us, you don't need to know about CDOs. You don't need to know about credit default swaps and derivatives and all manner, shape, or form of calculus and quants and all of these genius guys. You just need to know that it's theft. And that's what it was that led to racketeering. Here's the other side of that. So we've just seen 91 indictments demonstrated by the United States government over and above the civil fraud trial in Donald Trump. And then, other elements that are coming through Jack White's investigation, the sum total of which has been that Donald Trump is guilty. This is a shortcut, but this is what the Justice Department said. This is what the January 6th investigation said. But this is their own words. They're like, Donald Trump defrauded the United States using deceptive acts and practices, utilizing documentation fraud, and a conspiracy of racketeering led by Rudolph Giuliani, which is ironic as hell, all things considered. I say this in my truth bombs all the time. The guy was the father of RICO, grandfather of RICO, during the 70s with all the 5 crime families. And you grew up with the Bronx at that time. So yeah, you were right in the midst of that stuff.
Trump was from Queens. Yeah, we knew him.
And all of this stuff. And then, he switched sides later on, but he's involved. This is all with the Fonnie Willis case. But the final piece of it, using criminal attorneys, and we proved this in the Department of Justice, proved this in the what they call the criminal fraud exception. And what it turns out to be, they've been saying, and this is coming through Lawrence Tribe every single night on network television with Lawrence O'Donnell, the complicity of corrupt judges that Trump appointed. Okay, that's the sum total of the cases against Donald Trump. What did we reveal to the people in the in the con?
Yeah, no, and I really appreciate you asking me this question and how you set it up, Patrick. Though I want you to know that this is a response that we probably need to do a truth bomb on by itself, because you laying the story of what happened to Addie Pope, which is the microcosm of the fraud and corruption that led all the way to Wall Street, and then lining that up with the fraud and the corruption that Donald Trump is being accused of, and in some cases has already been identified as proven that he did. Right. What that says, and your point has been that this is what you're proving is the systemic fraud, the methodology of systemic fraud, that Donald Trump is engaged in control fraud.
What did Devin O'Leary say this morning?
Yeah, right. He's saying that that Donald Trump. That's I was going to reference that. That Donald Trump is just doing things on how they're done, you know,
And
and that
everybody does.
everyone does. Okay, but here's the thing, and this is what might surprise you because this has always been my. Well, so why now? Trump has done business this way his entire life.
That's right.
He's right. So why now? And I think the answer to this question goes back to the conversation that Giannis Varoufakis had with oh Clinton's Treasury Secretary. I mentioned it earlier in the conversation.
Summers.
Yeah, Larry Summers. Donald Trump, even though he's a mid-level player, was an insider. He was an insider. And the rule of insiders is the insiders never talk about how things happen on the inside. So the question I think you should ponder is, what did Donald Trump do that the insiders are trying to convict him of the very game that the insiders play, right? The fact that they're doing that, the fact that they are accusing him in daylight of what they do, suggests that he has been cut outside of the insiders. And my submission to you is that the way Donald Trump, when he decided what kind of politician he wanted to be, in the same way that Giannis was asked, what kind of politician do you want to be? Right? Right? He decided to be the kind of politician who was willing to reveal tidbits of the insider game. And how did he do it? He went, do you remember in 2016 when he had the 20 Republicans up there on the stage? And he said, I just want y'all to know, right, that I donate to every one of their campaigns.
That's right.
Right.
That's right.
And that because I donate to everyone, he's demonstrating how the system works. Because I donate to every one of their campaigns, when I give them a call, no matter what they're saying now, this nonsense they're saying, that when I give them a call, they take my call.
Right.
And they do what I say to do. So I know how this system works.
Right.
He revealed to the American public a little taste more of the game, of the con, right? And that's why the insiders are pissed off at Donald Trump, right? It is true. He's done exactly what they do. But and now this guy is going on. He don't understand by going on, Fox Business News and stuff like that, and saying he's only revealing how it's done. You weren't saying the quiet. This is how insulated the insiders feel. Is that they feel that they can just say the truth out loud.
But that's the point.
And what has Donald Trump said? Donald Trump said, I could kill someone on Times Square.
Right. Before we go, we could go in a million different Donald Trump.
I know. So let me tell you.
The main point is this. What I'm trying to say is that, look, whatever you feel about Donald Trump, okay, what he is a red carpet to what we're revealing to you. That's happening at a much higher level. That we're trying to make you go ahead.
Yes, Patrick, you're right. But there's also a lesson in it for you. And this is what I'm saying. Because you demonstrate your contempt for Donald Trump, right? And we're trying to appeal to MAGA.
I tell him all the time he's getting the raw deal by a system that's cherry picking.
Right. Okay. So
I tell him that all the time.
All I'm saying here is exactly right. Okay. If we can acknowledge that this is just the insiders punishing one of their own, right? Okay. We could. Donald Trump is still Donald Trump, right? But the idea is he's literally using a tidbit of the truth. He called out Bush. I mean, you're right. We can go on how he's done that, but that is the shred in a sea of lies. Because what's the biggest critique of Donald Trump is that he's just this relentless liar. Oh, really? Like Obama is not a relentless liar. Like W wasn't a relentless liar. Oh, yeah, that's okay, right. But Donald Trump actually said a few things that are so true in the political world that no one says them. So this is okay. This is why he's being. And I know you say, why am I raining on your point? The point is that yes, he is guilty of of how they make their money, of how it's done. but he's being exposed for a reason.
Right. He's the red
Right.
carpet to it is the point. But what I'm trying to say, because, okay, look, you got to understand this methodology. And I know you do, but I've laid this out in my truth bombs too. And again, guys, I've done 473 now truth bombs, some of which are, I mean, yeah, they're me ranting, but I'm not a ranting lunatic. I'm coming from a place that I spent years and years and millions of dollars talking to the most important people, getting the most bulletproof information to where I've made the case to where I've become a modern day, and I hate to say it because it's almost sacrilegious because it's like comparing yourself to Jesus in my world. I've become a modern day Ferdinand Pecora. Who was Ferdinand Pecora? Ferdinand Pecora was the guy who brought all of this information right after the Great Depression that exposed everything Wall Street had gotten away with to create the Great Depression. And that's what ultimately turned America into a country for a short time into a by and for the people, because they figured out the solutions to the problems that created that era, of which we spent the next 45 years decimating to get into the situation that we're at. In the one calculus that Donald Trump has proved time and time again, and this is what's going on, is his methodology is lie, deny, switch the blame, and implicate. That's ironically what the system's doing to him right now to cover up their deception. Okay.
Yes.
What we're providing you, and what nobody, because of the Kaiser Sose reality that if you're going to shoot the king, you better not miss. The only guy that is, and here's my man in the trenches that is literally realizing I'm an island to myself. I bet you right now, everybody listening to us, and this has been the challenge so far that I've experienced with people that aren't like you and me. They're like, yeah, but I need a Messiah, but yet I don't want to understand all the information. I've been destroyed by this. I don't have time, but I need somebody to save me and all of these other things. But yet the reality, like Roseanne says, there's got to be this kind of like just morphing of everything at the same time. Now, to Kevin's point, we need 80 million people. Are 80 million people going to see everything like Patrick Lovell? No, of course not. If we looked at the same painting, are we going to, or in movie, are we going to interpret it the exact same way? No. That's why we have categories of things that we can all get into for our own thing. I like to listen to jazz. I like to listen to punk rock. I like to listen to reggae, whatever. Some people might like to listen to just country music. Okay, fine. It's a big free country. But at the same time, an airplane flies when all of the systems work in synchronicity to enable that objective to do so the way that we all expect it to do so. That's the way our government has to function. And what we're trying to get people to understand, regardless of who the messenger is, and I am the messenger, and like Roseanne said before, the truth is the savior. Let's not conflate in people trying to calibrate and understand who Patrick Lovell is. In fact, I'll ask you the question: do you think I've got a Messiah complex?
No, I think that you, again, when you have been decimated by something and you find out why, you become a supercharged person to do something about it.
Thank you.
That's who you are. It's not ego.
That's what I need people to understand.
It's not.
It's not, and I'm not trying to fight Tucker and everybody else because of ego. It's because again, and I learned this recently from the stupid AI, and it says everything it needs to say. And you heard my conversation yesterday, and you know this stuff to be true. And we've already talked for 2 hours, and we're going to sum this up because I'm going to give you the last word on this. But yesterday we talked to a person who I'm going to do an interview. I've got to just allude to her because it's a secret interview that Kevin's been, privy to, and
Amazing.
She, from a different space, says a lot of the exact same things that I'm saying. And in fact, says the exact same things Kevin's saying. She is actually the glue between our 2 points on this, is she not? It was really quite extraordinary. But the point that I was trying to get to in her conversation about the big lie that we're revealing to you. Oh, I know what it was. I was trying to say about this AI thing. Okay, so there's this AI thing on Twitter X called Grok. If you're a paid member, okay, or subscriber, whatever. And I guess the idea of Grok is to kind of humor you and kind of keep you in check on what you do, and try to maybe use roasting humor to kind of make you aware of your what you sound like to Grok, which might be what you sound like to the broader populace. I guess that's the idea. Okay. and if you've ever seen a roast, it's usually it goes for the jugular, right? They try to take out your ultimate vulnerabilities, use it against you to embarrass you, humiliate you, and all of those things to make you, more humble. Okay, and that's the idea. And I like the idea, okay, of this program. But this is what it does. It's taken the sum total of what I do, okay, and it roasts me in just ridiculous asinine ways, but it levels on three situations at all times. It doesn't go into the fact that I go after Rachel Maddow. It doesn't go into the fact that I go after Barack Obama. It doesn't go into the fact that I go after Lawrence O'Donnell. It doesn't go into the fact that I go into MSNBC or Elizabeth Warren or Bernie Sanders if I'm criticizing them. What it goes into always is Elon Musk, Tucker Carlson, and Vivek Ramaswamy. Now, if I'm thinking, and this is what our friend said yesterday, she knows when she's throttled down, right? If I'm like, okay, I see that I have a comment that I do on a thread way over here that has nothing to do with what my normal, truth bombs are revealing, which are this encapsulation of what we've talked about for 2 hours. And, I get this comment that gets 30,000 views like that. That happens to me all the time. And yet what I'm revealing, what we've just talked about for 2 hours, and there's so much more that we could talk about, that just reveals the details, again, going back to the CIA and the 2008 financial crisis and what happened with Federal Reserve Act 13.3, which is the ultimate whodunit, which is the ultimate third rail. But that third rail, that won't let us tell that story. That even though I criticize all of those people I've just mentioned, it identifies only those three people. So why do you think that is?
That's your question
To you?
to me? To me? Oh, because I figured this is your windup. Oh no. Oh, clearly that is a tell on how the algorithm. What's the sensitivity of the algorithm? Absolutely.
There you go. It's that simple.
Absolutely.
It's that simple.
You know,
Okay, so take us home. Take us home, man. Close us up because I'm just saying
okay.
that's just an example, and that happens on YouTube, that happens on Facebook, that happens on any social media. That's the way these things are designed these days. We're
Absolutely.
desperately trying to get the truth that the $90 billion apparatus of our federal government couldn't give you. And we've got. But we're trying to do that while building the plane at the same time that we're flying it to get the clean new deal, of which my man Kevin, I thought, orchestrated brilliantly. Close us out, man, and give me the
Yeah.
message that you want to give me.
Yeah, I'm going to close out basically answering the question of whom we're talking to, who has been subject to the con, to the systemic flaw, the systemic fraud and corruption that's destroying our country. Okay, so I'm
And
going
the
to give
world.
you two, and the world. I'm going to give you two examples, right? That frame all the kinds of people who were involved. It'll take me a moment, but I won't do a Putin moment. Don't worry. We won't be here half an hour later. Okay. So the first one is right out,
That was fun.
right? 30
Or a
seconds.
Patrick level truth bomb moment. I mean, come on, to win.
So the first one is Addie Polk out of the company. So right, this was a 90-year-old woman, and essentially she took out a small loan to do a repair on her house. And from that small loan to do a repair on her house that she was easily able to afford, right? People created new loans of which they never told her about, of which they overinflated the value of her house to and they took the money. And then,
They did a mortgage in their name that they put.
oh yeah,
they stole.
absolutely. They used her name, used her thing, but they took the money. So when she was getting default notices, she did not understand, right? Because it had no correlation to the loan that she knew about, which more than likely she probably paid the damn thing off, right? Right? Okay, okay. And so when she killed herself on a foreclosure because she could not understand why they were taking her house, right? Okay, so that is a 90-plus-year-old woman, right? On fixed income pensions, right? Okay, so that's one side of the economic spectrum. This example is from David Webb's The Great Taking, which I advise people to take a look at that. Okay, if you are wealthy enough to have a client account at an investment bank like Goldman Sachs, so that's some real money now. Now you must be way up here, $500,000 a year or whatever. Okay, if you're wealthy enough to have a client account at an investment bank where they're investing your money directly, okay. When David Webb revealed that when Lehman Brothers went bankrupt in September 2008, right? Now, typically, if you got money at a brokerage account and your broker goes bankrupt, you call up whoever and say, wire my assets, my money, my securities that you're holding to a solvent broker, right? That's what you would do. Well, the people who had their money at account at Lehman were told that because Lehman went bankrupt, that JP Morgan Chase had seized their money, their assets. That's right. Because Lehman Brothers, as your broker, as the investment bank, right, was allowed under the UCC code to take out debt and secure it by your client assets. And when they went bankrupt and couldn't pay off the debt that they had incurred from JP Morgan Chase, JP Morgan Chase was able to take your assets. So if you're wealthy enough and you currently have a client account at an investment bank, we're talking to you, right? Because right now, the corruption that has been put in place is if your investment bank goes belly up, right? You could lose and will likely lose your assets, right? To the corruption. And the thing about
Nobody is safe.
no one is safe. The thing about that level of corruption is that they changed the laws such that even fraud doesn't protect you. Because that's fraud, right? No one asked you, Lehman Brothers didn't ask their clients, can we use your assets as collateral for financing? They didn't ask them that, right? And the court validated that it's okay that that JP Morgan Chase took the client's assets, even if it would have been considered fraud, right? So that is how bad the corruption is.
And that
So
explains tens of millions of situations that took place in the aftermath of the financial crisis, just so we know. That's tens
absolutely.
of millions. Okay.
Tens of millions. So if your socioeconomic class is anywhere between Addie Polk, a 90-year-old woman on a pension, right? Or someone who's wealthy enough to have a client account at an investment bank, you need to sign up for the Clean New Deal because you are in the process of getting robbed.
That's right.
By this corruption, So that's
how do we know that it's called safe harbor and right of assignments? And I mean, there's technical lingo that
there's technical stuff, but that's the bottom line.
Yeah. And there's even more,
and it's even more. So okay, so that's what I have to say. Thank you, Patrick. This has been an incredible conversation. And
when we're going to share with Russell Brand and Tucker Carlson, we're going to send this to them.
Yeah, that would be wonderful.
That's what we're going to do. And look, my promise to you, look, what we started with, look, and I want the audience to rein in us. Maybe we ought to have a democratic discussion about this. But look, I don't make it personal. Look, I'm about free markets. I really am. I am a capitalist, but not a capitalist in a way that is what we're describing. What we're talking is a different definition of capitalism. We're talking about theft. We're talking about techno-feudalism. We're talking about looting. We're talking about crony capitalism. We're talking about all myriads of shapes of things that aren't risk reward. And we're not talking about the integrity of law, because what Kevin just laid out was the perversion and inversion of all civil rights laws that protect homeowners and any other commodity class. I mean, there are laws in every direction that protect theft and deception through fraud, i.e., that the government is demonstrating in Donald Trump. You can't. This is the entire purpose of the Securities and Exchange Commission. You don't defraud investors, and you don't do it by illegal reps and warranties, which is what they do all the time. And now what he just revealed to us, and there's some work we got to do on this as well. But in the end, what we've just created, what we call the privileged class, which is what are they called? The secured creditor, not the secured creditor. What was the terminology that
it is secured creditors? But the funny thing about, that's why I didn't want to get too much into the weeds. But literally, the protected class of the secured creditors is what's called the GSIBs, the top four largest banks in the
There you
country.
go.
That's
And,
it.
they're connected to the Federal Reserve, which is the
Yeah.
Federal Reserve of these guys. And so when money doesn't grow on trees for you and me, it grows on trees for them. And they have completely created a hostile takeover of the entire separation of powers through all of the corruption that we're revealing to you. And that's what you're looking at, people. And so, anyway, I mean, look, the vote. So, like, look, Rachel Maddow, as you led me to the water to realize, and I wasn't against it, like in the analogy, you can take a horse to water and you can't make him drink. No, I'm very well aware of all of the minutia of the massive geopolitical deception that happens in intelligence agencies through the history of the Cold War and what could have led to all of the elements that you've revealed to me that I bought. And there's probably so much more that I should probably know, given what I know about the contextualization of the stuff we're talking about. But as it relates to the Minsk agreements and yada, 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 and then NATO and expansion and who's telling the truth under what circumstances and what could lead to World War III, which are all extremely important. But this is my message to you, people. Given what we've already talking about and what everybody else is talking about, Tucker Carlson and Russell Brand and so on and so forth, look, if there is a World War III, it's going to maintain the system that we have, with a whole lot of us once again being expendable. What I continue to tell people, and what I started my journey with back in 2011 when I made my first documentary film, I'm not expendable and you're not either. So quit acting like it. If you come to us with the facts and we elevate the facts above the noise of confusion and pollution of misery and deception and tyranny, and that's what this is the misery of tyranny, that we create the clean new deal, which is the exodus from corruption to create the resurrection of the American dream. There's nothing more American. And you've got a white guy from one side of the country and side of experience and a black guy from a different side of the country and a different experience telling you the same thing. Absolutely. And we don't have to be in a complete alignment on every single thing, but we can tell you this with unabashed inspiration and truth, that if you believe in liberty and justice for all, which I do, and I know he does, and if you're willing to lay down everything on it, like Roseanne said, this is the only way. And it's the only way to do it peacefully. When I say lay it down, everything, I'm not saying we're going to go off with our heads and create a revolution, because we're not going to beat the strongest military in the history of the world. We can't. No. That's not a possibility. We can do it with what we still have left, the shreds of remaining of democracy, but you have to be informed. And for those of you who listen for 2 hours and 21 minutes, God bless you, right? And yeah, do we need Russell Brand to jump in here and really wrap his head around it? That would be beautiful. I only tried it for 2 years.
I think if once we make it safer for them to do it, again,
by the way, I always thought that too. I always thought that too. But the way I think that we make that safer is if tens of thousands of you come on and we start getting momentum.
That's what it takes.
That's what we need. And eventually, we've said this. You might be in the back of your head, for those of you who've listened to my truth bombs before, you're gonna be thinking to yourself potentially, well, okay, where's the ask for the money? I'm not gonna ask you for money yet, because if you buy into what we're saying, we spent millions of dollars to give you the 33 trillion, which is now $70 trillion truth. If you invest your own time, you can't be lied to. Just can they lie to you now that no. You have the elements that we have?
Oh no, it's again in the Truman Show. Once you see the glitch, once you watch the con, it's done. You can't unring that bell.
And that's the point of everything, guys. It's so simple. Guys, I just want liberty and justice for all through separation of powers that has the integrity of law, and will never be perfect. But this is a shit show. What's going on right now is a downward spiral to hell, and it's a fractured society, which is failed state, and it's the United States. Never in a million years, back in the late 70s, early 80s, mid 80s, even 90s, would I have thought this. I would never have even contemplated this stuff until 9/11. But ever since 9/11, it's gotten from bad to worse, and it keeps getting worse, and it's not going to get better. And we've got existential problems, and all problems can be fixed. And I want to end up, with all of this misery and this sadness, if you will, and almost hopelessness. No, it's what Kevin said. When you've got the truth, you're bulletproof. You become empowered, and an empowered populace is what they cannot have. And there's nothing the American people, and quite frankly, people from around the world, but particularly the American people.
Yes.
There's nothing we can't accomplish. We've demonstrated miracles after miracles after miracles, and here's time for one more to be able to usher in, many, many, many more generations of miracles. I mean, man, come on, guys. This is what it means to be an American. Trust me, it does. So that's all I have to say. Anything else?
No, Patrick, that was perfect. Thank you so much for today. I hope everyone lasts the whole 2.5 hours because this was an important conversation. This might be the game changer conversation.
In solidarity, my man.
You got that, my brother. In solidarity, we are on it
Onwards and upwards, my friends, man. Failure is not an option
because this is the righteous grind.
for the clean New Deal.
Boom.
All right, man. All the best,
Thank
buddy. We'll talk soon.
All righty.